What if? Yes, what if? It's an age-old question that can be asked about many facets of life, and the same can be asked about the toys that we grew up with. That said, it can also pertain to the toys that we could have had before a change in plans occurred which prevented such items from being put into full production. Yes, the ninja craze was definitely a thing in the 1980s, and naturally it would carry over from the late 80s through to the 1990s, along with that of extreme sports and colorful contestants, as showrunners looked for reasons to cross over athleticism with the world of televised entertainment. And as G.I. Joe, a real American hero, was on its last legs during its initial run, one may be surprised to know that there was a plan to expand the ninja ranks within the hero faction as well as that of Cobra the enemy. And so our story begins right here. Let's get to it. When an action figure brand as popular as G.I. Joe manages to run continuously from 1982 to 1994, it's hard to fathom the dissolution of a line that was a pop culture mainstay for such a long time. And that's not even considering G.I. Joe's inception during its 1960s military era and follow-up 1970s period as a daring adventurer. Alas, G.I. Joe was cancelled midway through 1994, bringing the end of an unforgettable era that mashed up military, sci-fi, and of course, ninja themes. While Hasbro did take some shift in direction with its short-lived Sergeant Savage and his Screaming Eagles, as well as the aptly 1990s named G.I. Joe Extreme, nothing could quite live up to what the 3 3/4 inch scaled Real American Hero lineup of figures brought to the table. But if this change in game plan never occurred, here's a taste of what a 1995 Real American Hero brand would have brought forward. We'd have seen a return of the Battle Corps, now known as Battle Corps Rangers, as well as some expansion of the Star Brigade faction of toys. A new subset, known as G.I. Joe Replicators, would have put a new spin on the franchise, showing us creatures that would emerge from a figure's chest by activating a button on the character's back. As for the particular topic at hand, we would have seen 5 ninja figures added to the line, bringing back the gaudy outfits of 1992 and 1993's Ninja Force. A follow-up grouping would have brought us a subset known as the Ninja Commandos. Popular belief is that these figures were planned for a 1995 release, though through some research, and as shown in the Art of G.I. Joe Omnibus by Carson Metaxas and Chad Huckle, this indicates that they could have been scheduled for release as early as the end of 1994. We'll go through the 5 characters one by one here. Now, on the G.I. Joe side, you have Budo, which would have been his 3rd appearance following his 1988 version 1 release and 1993 mail-in that was part of a larger figure 4-pack. There's also Flint, which would have been a 5th version of the character. This of course follows his popular version 1 release, as well as his 2nd Tiger Force release, a 3rd version in the Eco Warriors subset, and a 4th version who was part of the Battle Corps. Storm Shadow was planned as well as a natural fit into any lineup of ninjas. This of course follows his original 1984 release as a Cobra character, as well as his 1988 version 2 release where he moved over to the side of the Joes, then his 3rd version that was a member of Ninja Force, and a 4th version that was part of the Shadow Ninjas subset. Of note, there does exist card backing to show us what an actual production figure would have looked like had it ever gone to retail. Now, it is worth wondering whether or not Storm Shadow would have been released as a good guy or a bad guy had the Ninja Commando subset actually made it into mass retail. Having said all this, since Storm Shadow was considered as a good guy ever since his 1988 version 2 release, it's probably a safe bet that he would have been a good guy in this particular subset as well. We then get to an unexpected character in this range, and that would be Road Pig. Following up on his Dreadnoks version 1 release and a 2nd version that was part of the 1991 Sonic Fighters grouping, Road Pig is an interesting study because his artwork is relatively prominent and shows him carrying a bladed weapon of sorts. Now, he's definitely not a character you'd think to add to a ninja lineup as opposed to say someone like Budo that would be a natural fit. We move over then to a new character in the lineup who's known as Knockout, It's unclear if he was meant as a hero or a villain, but one can speculate that he's a villain, or else Road Pig would have been the sole Cobra character in the subset, though this still adds a layer of complication given the gray area of Storm Shadow's allegiance. It does beg the question whether or not Knockout was intended to be an entirely new character or an update to an existing character, like for example Battle Force 2000 Knockdown, due to the similarity in their names. It is hard to say, but it's unlikely he was meant to be Knockdown since that character was a Joe and not a Cobra. That being said, it's a good conversation to have with your fellow collectors. Also of note is that the characters were shown in not just one, but two color patterns. The first is the set of patterns that were already shown previously, and the second, well, looking at them side by side, you can see the differences more clearly, and these are figures that we would have also seen at retail had they been sent out as intended in 1995. First, the aforementioned Knockout was shown as a Paintmaster prototype here in some darker colors on the torso and also the different colors in the pants. Looking at Storm Shadow, the primary color scheme remains, but his secondary colors vary in that his mask has changed in color and some of the green has been swapped over to orange. Flint's colors are quite similar between the two versions, though do note the differences in the hands, and unless there's an issue with the lighting of these photos, one of them has a darker shade on the torso and boots. Road Pig's color scheme remains the most similar, but if you look closely, the one on the left has the black detailing on the boots going higher up, such that it covers the knees, whereas the one on the right does not. Budo probably has the most obvious contrast in color scheme between the two versions. He's green, red, and black in one appearance, but then gold, blue, and red in another. And I'd say that this level of difference is a bit more indicative of how version 1s and version 2s of previous characters have changed throughout the G.I. Joe line. Also do take note that Budo's entire figure sculpt that was intended for the Ninja Commandos grouping was used for the Mortal Kombat Shang Tsung character. So you can say in a way that we did get the figure even if it was just a transference of the figure mold from one character to another. Alas, we'll never really know how well the Ninja Commandos would have done at retail if they were ever released to the mass public, and we can only wonder about what memories we all would have had if we got the chance to play with them as children growing up. That being said, they would have made a fine addition to the existing cast of Ninja figures we already got. It is also inconclusive as to why Hasbro put an end to the G.I. Joe line altogether in the middle of 1994. What we do know though through some research is that corporate level political changes were sweeping through Hasbro during this time. For example, they had purchased rival toy company Tonka some years earlier, which included the Kenner division that was previously acquired by Tonka already. Contrary to what many fans think, G.I. Joe was still selling reasonably well into the 1990s. That said, the line was ceding some ground on toy aisles to rival action figure lines like the resurging Batman or Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and Hasbro themselves were already gearing up to sell the similarly scaled Star Wars Power of the Force 2 line in 1995. Perhaps there was some fear that a new Star Wars line competing internally with G.I. Joe would have been a bad thing. All that considered, there's still a chance that G.I. Joe, a real American hero, would have seen a reasonable amount of sales had it been given a chance to continue in 1995. But again, we'll never know for sure. But what we do have are these pre-release images about an untold part of toy history that might have been, but never got to be. As a side note though, we'll point out that the independent toy line known as Legends of the Hidden Force have gone on to bring some homages of these unreleased figures to market. Some will look directly like the figures we should have had, while others are similar only in color scheme. Either way, this does give us some semblance of what it feels like to own a slice of toy history in tangible form. So for what it's worth, these homages are a love letter to the history of unreleased G.I. Joe toys. If nothing else, they certainly bring some attention to the Ninja Commando figures, who to the casual fan were probably nothing more than a footnote in the pages of toy history. But hopefully, videos like this one can bring even more attention to this interesting tidbit of action figure lore. In the end, it's always worth wondering what could have been. And if you enjoyed this video, don't go anywhere just yet. I'm going to put another unproduced G.I. Joe Toys video that you can click on right over here, or for a look at an altogether different unproduced toy video topic, you can click on this video right over here. And with that, YoJoe, and I'll see y'all next time. Thanks again, and take care.